All right, I will say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan Abad Leim Tovos, Steve and Teri Czinn, for dedicating over Shimon Jarshos this month in honor of the birth of their grandchild, Devorah Eliana Czinn, and in memory of Dr. Zinn's father, Bunim Tzvi Ben Chaim, Zichron Bracha. Shmuel Robyn Korobkin, as a zechus refuah sheleima for Rabin's cousin serving in the IDF, Benyamin Chaim Pesach ben Musha Chana, and creation of the Yahrzeit of Rabin's mother, Pesa Mira, Bas Chaim, Zichron Bracha. Dr. Moshe and Ellen Gavant, in memory of Dr. Gavant's parents, Yakov Meir ben Moshe Leib, and Shena Bas Abba, and Dr. Behzad and Yemina Soufer of Los Angeles, in the merit of a speedy and full recovery for Esther Bracha Bas Chaya. Our Day of Learning sponsor, Aaron Schiller, in honor in recognition of Yossi Opendin's discerning party attire. Okay, good. We take all forms of sponsorships. Our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Yankee and Elisa Statman, in memory of Shendel Stein, Menucha, Shendel Yehudis, Bas, David Yosef, on the occasion of a Yahrzeit, and Rabbi Kalman Akiva Kovacs. Sponsoring today's daf, a mazel tov to each and everyone learning Mishnah Yomi on completing Bava Mitzvah and starting Bava Basra today. I will say just a good plug for Mishnah Yomi. Also an opportunity to Chazer Daf Yomi. So the Mishnayos are right over here, right by Moshe David in the front. And I will say with that, let us begin. I will say the incredible part is, obviously everyone's followed the election incredibly closely. And what the most beautiful thing to always contemplate is, presidents come and go. The daf is a constant. It is one of the most beautiful and soothing things about Ruchnius. And this is why we refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a rock. Hatzur Tamim Pa'alo. That, we live in a world of things that are just always so back and forth and always so up and down and never know what's good. It's the nature of life. And the beauty of Ruchnius is your anchor in a stormy sea of life. Because life always has all different things going on. So whether your candidate won, your candidate lost, you're happy, you're unhappy, whatever it is, the beautiful part is the consistency and the anchorkeit that ultimately the daf gives us, that Yiddishkeit gives us, that our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us. Most incredible thing. So with that, let us begin. I know I left you off in a cliffhanger yesterday. So remember again, the Mishnah spoke about the idea that if a person goes ahead and gifts away his entire estate, giving it away, not giving to his children, again, it works. So in the Mishnah, we quoted Rabbi Shmuel Silber. Rabbi Shmuel Silber said, but if his children were not behaving appropriately, then halacha l'maisa, it's a good thing. Zachur latov. The Gemara then told the story of Yosi ben Yoezer. Yosi ben Yoezer had a son who was not noheg b'kishura. He wasn't behaving appropriately, and therefore halacha l'maisa, what happened? His father gifted away a bag of gold coins to the Beis Hamikdash. Subsequently, we saw the entire story of Yosi ben Yoezer, of his son. Son gets married, has a baby, buys a fish, finds a jewel in the fish, comes to the Beis Hamikdash, skipping parts of the story, comes to the Beis Hamikdash, and the Beis Hamikdash tells him, wonderful, we appraise this stone at 13 purses of gold dinarim. We only have 7 on hand. Yosi ben Yoezer says, fine, I'll take the 7, and the other 6 are considered to be a donation to the Beis Hamikdash. There are 2 versions as to what happened next. Amdu v'kasvu. Yosef ben Yoezer hichnis achos ubeno hichnis sheish. So again, version number 1, they wrote in the history of the Beis Hamikdash, Yosef ben Yoezer went ahead and dedicated 1. This is the father dedicated 1 person to the Beis Hamikdash, and his son dedicated 6. V'iged amri Yosef ben Yoezer hichnis achos. Others say Yosef ben Yoezer went ahead and donated 1 purse of gold coins, ubeno hotzi sheva, and his son took out 7. So you hear the difference in the versions. In version number 1, the focus is on what the son donated. In version number 2, the focus is what the son took. So the Gemara says something very interesting. Midika amri hechnis mechlad the shapir of it. Now, both says the Gemara makes the following suggestion. So remember, what's the backdrop to all of this? The backdrop to why are we bringing down this story? Besides the fact that everybody loves stories, right? But the reason we're bringing down this story is because we're trying to figure out in the Mishnah, does the Tanakama, meaning the Rabbanon, argue on Rabbi Shimon Gamliel or not? Right? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that if a person has a son and the son is not behaving the appropriate way, is zachor latov. It is good to write him out of the will, or it's good to gift away your property so that he doesn't get it. Do the Rabbanon agree with that concept or not agree with that concept? So the Gemara is bringing down this story, and the Gemara says as follows: Midika amri hechnis michlal deshapir of it. So we'll say, so interestingly enough, from the fact that the story is phrased as, Yosi ben Yoezer donated 1 purse of gold coins, his son donated 6. It makes it sound like Yosef ben Yoezer did something good, in that again his actions ultimately caused his son to give even more tzedakah. So it sounds like his actions were appropriate. The Gemara says, 1 second. I can say just the opposite. Look at the second version of the story. What was the second version of the story? In version number 2, so it says that Yossi ben Yoezer donated 1 purse, and his son extracted from the Beis Hamikdash 7. That makes it sound like Yossi ben Yoezer did something bad. So you're right, the truth is, great story, but it actually doesn't help us resolve our outstanding questions. So therefore, Rabbi said, the Gemara says, "My havi Allah." So bottom line, if a father has a son, and the son, to use the lashon of the Mishnah, is eino noe kishura, right? Is not going down the right path. That's the lashon of noe kishura, not walking the right line, not going down the right path. So should a father take away the estate from that son or not? Obviously, again, you can't bequeath it to someone else. Well, you could, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, can you just gift it away? Is that the right thing to do or not? My havi Allah. So the Gemara says, Tashma Damali Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Shmuel Rav Yehuda Shinina. Shinna Bose is a compliment. Shinna literally means sharp one. Someone who is astute. Lo tehavi be'evuri achsanto. So Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda, never be present when ultimately, again, you are moving inheritance from one person to another. Even from a bad son to a good son, the kol sheken mibra lebarta, and all the more so from a son to a daughter. From a son to a daughter. So what Shmuel is saying to Rav Yehuda is, it is bad to disrupt the natural flow of inheritance. Inheritance is structured in a way to work de facto. Don't start moving it around from kid to kid. So don't move it from a bad son to a good son. Don't move it from a son to a daughter. Don't be there when Yerusha is moved around. Don't disrupt the natural order. So Rabbi says, so interestingly enough, so the Gemara says, so clearly the Gemara comes out as saying like this, that the Rabbanon disagree with Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Because whereas Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that if a person has a son who is not noheg kishura, in fact it is a mitzvah to take away the Yerusha from him, the Rabbanon clearly disagree with that concept and say, do not take away Yerusha from a child. Don't do that. Now, by the way, why not? Right? Why not take away Yerusha from a child? So especially if the child's not doing the right thing. So the Rashbam, I realized yesterday, I didn't read this Rashbam. The Rashbam says something very beautiful. The Rashbam explains, he quotes, "De Dilma nafka mina zara ma'alya." So what's like is what can happen, and this is incredible. Even if the son is currently not doing the right thing, he's in a noy kishura, maybe he'll have offspring who are doing the right thing. See, once you remove inheritance, that is forever removed from that particular child. And therefore, again, you prevent his offspring from benefiting from it as well. But even if the son is not doing the right thing, maybe the son will have sons, maybe the son will have kids, and the kids themselves will be doing the right thing. Don't deprive future generations. And it's such a beautiful, aspirational Gemara as well. Okay, sometimes in life, both as individuals, we're not doing the right thing at one moment, but in Meir Hashem, that doesn't mean we can't do something better going forward. And even just generationally. Just because right now this child may unfortunately be a disappointment doesn't mean that in the future generations could help to turn things around. So don't remove the inheritance from where it's supposed to go, because even though you may not want this son to have it, you may be depriving good future generations from benefiting from this property as well. So therefore, the Gemara seems to indicate that halacha ma'isa, don't move around inheritance. Just better not to do it. Okay? So the Gemara goes back to Tarabanan, another story. Tarabanan. It's the story of a guy whose children were not behaving in the right way. The Kasav Nechasav Liyonasan Ben Uziel. Oh, okay. So he wrote his property to Yonasan ben Uziel. So also we're going to talk about Yonasan ben Uziel. Very exciting Gemara is ahead of us on Kuf Lamed Daled. Like Yonasan ben Uziel was one of the Talmidim of Hillel. So this guy was unhappy with how his children were living their lives. So he decides to go ahead and write his property, give his estate to Yonasan ben Uziel, big tzaddik. Okay. So the Gemara says, what happened? So what did Yonasan ben Uziel do? Machar shlish, he sold off a third of the property. Vehiktish shlish, he consecrated a third. Vehechzir lebanav shlish, and he gave back to the kids 1/3. So 1/3 he sold off, presumably kept for himself the proceeds. 1/3 he was makdish, tzedakah, and the remaining 30 he gave back to the kids. Right? So again, remember, so Yakov has 3 sons, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Right? Yakov was unhappy with how his sons were living, gives it to Yonasan ben Uziel, and Yonasan ben Uziel ends up giving back 1/3 of the estate back to the kids. So Baal of Shammai Maklo, Shammai came to Yonasan ben Uziel b'maklo b'tarmilo, with literally again his staff in his pouch. Now I will say, so that's an expression. When you come to someone b'maklo b'tarmilo, that's means you're coming on the warpath. Like you're angry. So Shammai comes to Yonasan ben Uziel and he's angry. Amalei Shammai. I'm sorry. So Shammai feels that Yonasan ben Uziel acted inappropriately. He's like, listen, you got this gift because the father didn't want the property to go to his kids. And now you're giving back 1/3 to the kids. That's not right. So Yonasan ben Uziel says back, Amalei Shammai, Emati yachal hotzi es mashe macharti, u'mashe kdashti, ate yachal lahotzi mashe chzarti. So listen to this. So Yonasan ben Uziel says, Shammai, fine. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If you have the power to reverse my sale and to reverse my hektish, then you could reverse my gift back to the kids. In other words, essentially what Yonasan ben Uziel was saying to Shammai was, you can't do anything about what I did. Right? The gift was given to me. I have a right to do with it as I please. And the same way you can't reverse my sale, and the same way you can't reverse my hektish, you also can't reverse the gift that I gave to the kids. Top of Kuf Lamed Daled, 134a. Im lav, right? If lav, and ultimately again, if you cannot reverse my sale and my hektish, then you have no ability to go ahead and reverse that which I gave to the kids. I will say 134a, first line on top. Meaning, I will say, it's great, right? So first of all, you see this fascinating machlokus team, this Gidolei Hadar. Yonasan ben Uziel, we're going to see the Talmud Mufak, the primary disciple of Hillel, having an argument with Shammai. This is the Shammai. Not Be Shammai, this is the Shammai. So the Gemara says over here, so essentially what Yonasan ben Uziel says to Shammai is, the father gave me a gift. If he gave me a gift, then what? It is mine to do with as I please. And you have no right, no one has any right to tell me what I could do with my gift. And the same way you can't undo the sale, and you can't undo the hagdish, you can't undo the gift that I gave back to the kids. So Amar Shammai said, Hitiach alai ben Uziel, Hitiach alai ben Uziel. So Hitiach literally means to throw something at someone, which just means that Ben Uziel has refuted me. So Shammai, interestingly enough, Shammai conceded defeat. He conceded defeat. Okay? Incredible. So the Gemara says, I'll look at the Rashma for just a moment. Titiach alai, kimo tiach dvarim klape maila. So this is an expression. Right? Titiach dvarim klape maila means to go ahead and literally throw a complaint heavenward. So tiach alai maila, kolomar, heshivani derech bizayon, finetzchani umilsa debedichusehi. Again, it's meant as a joke. It's not that Shammai wasn't braggis. Shammai was just conceding defeat. Okay, in Yonei Diyoma, right? So again, right? So again, he was conceding defeat. So the Gemara says, Meikara, my sover. So I'll say, so now here's what's interesting. So now, the truth is, this really seems to be a kind of obvious case. Obviously, if you're gifting something to someone, so Lemaisa, again, of course, the recipient has the ability to do with it whatever he wants. So it's interesting that Shammai came along and Shammai challenged Yonasan ben Uziel's ability to gift property back to the kids. So the Gemara just says, what was Shammai thinking? What was he thinking? So we'll say, so this is great. We've actually seen this Gemara before. The The Gemara says, we've seen Bakshan, we've seen all Gemaras before. But this now, the Gemara says, listen to this. My Savar, Mishum Maisa de Beis Choron. Shammai was coming armed with the following story from Beis Choron. What happened in Beis Choron? Here we go. This nan. Maisa be Beis Choron. There was a story in Beis Choron. Be'echad shehaya aviv mudar hana'ah hemenu. So there was a father's son, right? We'll call him Yakov and Ruvain. And what happened? Ruvain had made a neder that his father can't get any hana from him. Okay, whatever the circumstances were, he made that neder. Now, what ended up happening? Now, the problem was, Ruvain was making a chasana. He's marrying off his son, and he wanted his father to be able to come to the chasana and partake in the su'udah. The problem, of course, is there was a neder. There's a vow in place. And the vow said that Yakov is not permitted to get any benefit from Ruvain. So Ruvain had this interesting chap. What did he do? V'amar lechavero, Hari chaser u'su'uda nesunin lecha b'matana ve'inan lefanecha ele kedei sheyava abba v'yochel imanu b'su'uda. So what happened? So Ruvain goes over to his friend. Right? Ruvain has a friend, Shimon. And Ruvain says, Shimon, here's the deal. I am hereby gifting to you, right, the chutzner, right, the area where the chasana is going to take place. So, right, the simcha hall and the food. I'll be giving it to you as a matana. Now, what's Ruvain's logic? Why is he giving it to Shimon as a matana? Because remember again, the neder only devolves upon what? Property owned by Ruvain. So Ruvain says, fantastic. I'm going to gift the chatzar, because remember, most people didn't get married in halls; they got married in a courtyard. So Bepashtos, again, Reuven's making the chasana in his chatzar. So I'm giving you my chatzar, and I'm giving you all the food for the su'udah. And this way, again, Shimon, it belongs to you. So because it belongs to you, my father could come to the chasana and partake of the food and enjoy it and be in the chatzar. This was his chapim. So I'm giving you this gift. And again, let's say, according to the case over here, so Reuven doesn't make a secret about it, right? Reuven is explicit as to why he's making this gift to Shimon. So the Gemara says, Amar lo, so listen to this. So Shimon says, okay, im shalihein, if the property is mine, harihin mukdashin l'shamayim. Okay. A little bit of a problem over here, right? So what happens? Shimon says, Shimon's feeling quite generous. So right, Shimon says, okay, listen, if it's mine, everything is hegdish. Everything is hektish. So the chatzar is hektish, the food is hektish, everything is hektish. So Ruvain says, hold up. Amar lo nasati lecha ela es shali shektaktishim l'shamayim. So I'm sorry. So lo nasati lecha es shali shektaktishim l'shamayim. So Ruvain says to Shimon, please, that's not why I gave you the gift. You know why I'm giving you the gift. You understand why I'm giving you the gift. And I'm not giving you the gift so that you could consecrate the property. That's not it. So to which Shimon responds, Amar lo nasata li eshelcha ela shetehe ata va'avicha ochlin v'shosin umaratzin zelazeh. So Shimon says, I know exactly why you gave me the gift. You're giving me the gift to circumvent your neder. Right? I got it. You're giving me the gift to circumvent your neder so that you could come enjoy, your father could come enjoy the chasana, eat together, stay together. That's why you're giving it to me, to circumvent your neder. V'yehei avon talei barosho. So you're doing this so that you're not in violation of your neder, but I am. In other words, that was going to obviously, technically speaking, Shimon's not in violation of the neder, but Shimon's saying, I understand that what you're trying to do is, you're trying to circumvent the isser of your neder and literally put the responsibility on me. Now again, the truth is, Shimon doesn't really have any responsibility, so to speak, in this situation. But what Shimon is saying is, you're playing a game with me. You're not really giving me a gift. You're giving me a halachically fictional gift so that you could circumvent your neder with your friend. So the idea over here, so therefore again, so Shammai comes along, right, and Shammai felt that this was kind of like the same gift of Beis Choron. It was clear when the father gave the property to Yonasan ben Uziel. Why did he give the property to Yonasan ben Uziel? Why? So that it shouldn't go to his kids. So Shammai felt that such a conditional gift like this works. And you have to understand that the das of the grantor, right? The das of the grantor was that he didn't want it to go to his kids. As such, the recipient, Yonasan ben Uziel, shouldn't give it to the kids. So again, the Gemara says, based on this, Amru Chachamim, the Chacham said, Kol matana she'eno, listen to this formulation. Kol matana she'eno shem hikdisha mukdashes eno matana. Any matana where the recipient can't be makdish it, can't consecrate it, is not a matana. In other words, how do you know if something is a matana? If something is a gift, if you have complete control, as manifest by your ability to be makdashit, that's a matana. If you don't have the ability to be makdashit, then ultimately it's not a matana, meaning it's not yours. Meaning, say it a little bit differently, the greatest display of ownership is the ability to be makdish something. If you can't be makdashit, you don't own it. But you will say such a beautiful yisod also, that in general, the highest level of ownership is the ability to consecrate something. The ability to take something and make it kaddish. That is demonstrative of true ownership. We always say we know this. Think about this even in the world of gashmias, right? What's the gashmias, right? What's the gashmias? What's the material wealth that really you own the most, so to speak? It's the wealth that you're able to uplift. Either, again, by using it for tzedakah, either by using it for some other holy purposes in life. That's the stuff you really own. The stuff that you just physically enjoy, that's very nice, but that's not demonstrative of your ultimate ownership. The demonstration of ultimate ownership is the ability to lift something up to its highest, holiest potential. So therefore, this is a fascinating din in gifts as well. So what's the litmus test? If something is truly being given as a gift, if the recipient has the ability to be makdashit, that's a gift. You don't have the ability to be makdashit, it's not a gift. It's just something else. Shabbos says, therefore, again, we come out full circle over here. We're going to come back now that we mentioned Yonasan ben Uziel. We're going to come back to Yonasan ben Uziel now. A very beautiful Gemara in just a moment. But Lamais, what comes out of here is as follows. Number one, the Rabbanan discreet Rabbi Shmuel Silber and hold that in general, don't deprive a kid of inheritance. Now, what I want to point out over is something very interesting. This doesn't in any way share what we spoke about earlier, right? Let's see, because remember again, what did we speak? We spoke about this concept that let's say I have sons and daughters, and I want my children to share in the estate equally. So remember again, we spoke about their halachic mechanisms that one could avail themselves. That's not what the Gemara is talking about over here. Here what the Gemara really means is about depriving children of inheritance. And what the Gemara essentially is coming out is, even if a child is not behaving appropriately, it seems to be that the spirit of halacha says, don't deprive kids of inheritance. Don't do that because you're unhappy with what they're doing. Obviously, we'll say this is not really talking about a case where chas v'shalom, a child is acting in a detrimental way, and the money can be used in detrimental fashions. That's a different discussion. But assuming the child is not noe kishura, the halacha says don't deprive a child of inheritance because you never know what happens in future generations. Good. And furthermore, that's halacha number one. Halacha number two, and therefore we do not pass the Sheming Gamliel. We do not pass the Sheming Gamliel in the Mishnah. Halacha number two is the definition of a gift is when the recipient has the ability to do whatever he wants with the item. Specifically, the ability to be makdish. Now, I just want to point out also, in halacha, there is a concept of matana almanas lahachzir. Right? There's a concept like that, of giving a gift on the condition that it's given back. There is such a concept like that. But in general, aside from matana almanas lahachzir, the greatest demonstration of complete gift conveyance is the ability of the recipient to be makdashit. And b'derech hashkafa, the things you own the most are the things you're able to uplift the most in this world as well. Incredible. Let's go by this. Supposed to say now, beautiful Gemara. Beautiful Gemara. Tanrabanan. Shmonim, supposed to say, Ayman Kufla Medalif, 134a, 3-6, about 8 lines up from before the lines get wide, right at the 2 dots. Tanrabanan. Shmonim Talmidim Halilol Hillel Azokim. Hillel had 80 students. I will say, Abba Pashtas, Hillel had more than 80 students. What it means is, Hillel had 80 primary students, as you'll see in just a moment. Listen to this. Shlosh Mehem, 30 of them, Ru'uyim Shetishra Aleim Shchina Kim Moshe Rabbeinu. Wow. So the upper 30, right, were so holy that they were fit for nevuah like Moshe. And you have to understand what that means. The Torah says, Lo Kam B'Yisrael Ki Moshe Od, that there's never another Moshe Rabbeinu. But they were on the level. To have nevuah like Moshe Rabbeinu. Shlosha mehem ru'uyim shetamulan chama ki Yoshua ben Nun. 30 of them were as holy as Yoshua ben Nun, just like Yoshua ben Nun caused the sun to remain in place, right? By Ai, right? The war with Ai. So ultimately, again, 30 of them were fit for to have the sun stand still like Yoshua ben Nun. Esrim Beinonim. So it's interesting. Whatever, the 20 guys, the bottom of the class, right? The bottom of the class, right? So the bottom of the class, so Esrim Beinonim, Esrim Beinonim. And 20 of them we're really good. I will say now again, everything is relative, right? So obviously, even the 20, right? So if the top 30 were like Moshe Rabbeinu, then the next 30 were like Yoshua Rabbeinu, and the next group, the next chevra, still pretty hailing, right? Still pretty holy. Esther Menonian. So listen to this. We'll say Gadol Shebekulon. Who was the greatest of Hillel's Talmidim? Yonasan ben Uziel. Incredible. Katan Shebekulon. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Wow. We'll say who was the bottom of the shir? Right? Who was the bottom of the class? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Now we'll say now the Gemara says now we'll come back to that. Amrlu Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. They say about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Shaloheniach Mikra uMishna Gemara Halachas Agadas Dikduke Torah v'Dikduke Sofer. Well, so Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, they said he learned everything. He knew everything. There was not one pasuk or Mishnah or Gemara or Halacha or Agada or details in Torah, Dikduke Sofer, which are details in rabbinic law, Kalin v'Chamurin, Gzeres Shabbos, Tekufos, Gematrias, Mashalos Kofsim, which literally means like the parables of the launderers. Not money launderers, actual launderers, right? In other words, that they would have these mashalim. There's a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom in the parables of simple people. Mashalos shualim, whatever this means, right? The parables of the animals. Sichas shedim, the conversations of the shedim. Sichas dekalim, the conversations of the palm trees. Sichas malachi hasharis, davar gadol v'davar katan. He knew everything. He knew, and the Rashbam points out what some of these things are. Right? But ultimately, again, the point is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai knew everything. Davar gadol v'davar katan. Big things, little things. Davar gadol, Ma'aseh Merkava. So ultimately, what's Davar gadol? That refers to Ma'aseh Merkava. That is the prophetic vision of Yechezkel. V'davar katan, Havios da'abaye v'rava. Ultimately, again, what's Davar katan? This refers even to the small exchanges, right? The questions and answers of Abaye and Rava. The Kaim Mashenemar, Lahanchil Oavai Yesh Va'osroseim Amalei. So we'll say to Mekayim the pasuk in Mishlei, literally again, I will go ahead and give over. Lahanchil Oavai Yesh Va'osroseim Amalei. I will go ahead to give over, to bequeath, ultimately again to those Ohavai, who I love, they will have, and I will fill their storehouses. The idea being that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had everything. I will say, I just want to point out something very interesting over here. So first of all, just to see, and this was the Katan Shebekulam. Right? So just to understand how great. Now, more about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, let's come back to him in just a second. Amra Allah, as the Gemara says, V'chime achar de Katan Shebekulam, Godol Shebekulam, alachas kama v'kama. So we'll say, so now, this was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So obviously, he's the lowest of the shir. Who was the highest? Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel. So we'll say, so now, so by the way, this is, by the way, just so you understand, Yonasan ben Uziel is Targum Yonasan, right? What you have in your Chumash, Targum Yonasan, that's Yonasan ben Uziel, that's Hillel's primary disciple, primary Talmud. So the Gemara says, so now, I don't understand, if like that's the lowest, and I don't even like to use the word lowest, Katan, the smallest, right? Because anything you say sounds like derogatory. But again, everything's relative. This was the lowest, the smallest of Hillel's Talmidim. So what can you say about Yonasan ben Uziel? So listen to this. So Moshe says, Amra Lav al Yonasan ben Uziel, B'shar sheyoshe v'osik b'Torah. When Yonasan ben Uziel would learn Torah, there was such intensity, called Ov shepareach alav nisraf. A bird that would fly overhead would be incinerated because of the intensity, because of the flame, because of the fire of his Torah. So I will say, so incredible. So first of all, just like Yonasan ben Uziel, it's just really amazing. So the Yismach Moshe, Yismach Moshe, who was the grandfather of the Satmar Rav, of Rav Yoel Teitelbaum. I think he was the Rav of Uyhel, of Hungary. So the Yismach Moshe says something amazing. He asks again, he says, I don't understand. Shkayach Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel, you're learning Torah with such intensity. Why should the bird suffer because of your intensity? Poor bird, right? The bird's just flying overhead. He's just being a bird. What do birds do? They fly. So because the bird happened to fly over the head of Yonasan ben Uziel, the bird should be incinerated by the Torah. Such a good kasha, right? What did the bird do wrong? So Yismach Moshe says something so beautiful. He says, B'ma chata of zesh nisraf. What did the bird do wrong that it should be burned by going ahead and flying overhead? Ela Peirushu, listen to this. Afilu of sha'avra al Yonasan ben Uziel. B'sha'a sheyasha v'asik b'torah v'shama taraso. Hu Allah b'madrega kimo malach saraf. Yismach Moshe says saraf doesn't mean incinerated. A saraf is a type of angel. It's the highest level, right? Sarafim Belfanim. It's the highest level of angels. That a bird that flew overhead by Yonasan ben Uziel was turned into a saraf, was turned into a malach, meaning what Rabbi say. So this, to me, this idea is so beautiful. What the Yismach Moshe is saying is like this. When a person learns, there are two different things that can happen when you learn. Your learning could be a highly personal experience, through which you learn, you're elevated, and you become holier, which is beautiful and wonderful. And then there are other times in which one's learning has the ability to uplift the world around them. When I learn, see, I will say, again, we know this. I could sit in my Gemara, close my Gemara, and then again, go about my day. Or somehow I could allow my learning to transform the world around me. Now, how does that happen? It can happen in a number of different ways. Part of it could be sharing what you learn with others, encouraging others to engage in the pursuit of spiritual growth. But it could also be allowing your ruchnius to transform who and what you are, so that you're a different person. So that when you go into the world, again, after learning, I'm a different husband, I'm a different father, I'm a different accountant, I'm a different plumber, I'm a different lawyer, whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm a different person. Insurance salesman, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm a different person. I'm a different person as a result of my ruchnius. Use your ruchnius to transform the world. I speak differently. I spend my time differently. I conduct myself differently. And all of these things have a dramatic ripple effect on everything. What the Yismach Moshe is saying is, Yonasan ben Uziel, do you know what made him great? His ruchnius impacted the birds. And I will say, by the way, lest you think, come on, that's impossible. How could your ruchnius impact birds? Also, we just learned this. We just learned in Parshas Noach. What happened in Parshas Noach? Humanity had become so terrible that Timale haaretz chamas. Right? The earth was changed. The animals were changed. Our actions have the ability to have a profound impact and influence on the world around us. And that's bein latov, bein lara. That's for both good and bad. Isn't this beautiful? The godless of Yonasan ben Uziel is that his ruchnius was so palpable that even birds that came in contact with him were changed. If we gird ourselves, I just love that word, right? If we gird ourselves, thank you, ArtScroll, right? If we gird ourselves with enough spirituality, I will say, we have the ability to change the world around us. We have the ability to, if you could change the birds, you certainly could change other people. And it's not even through what you say or what you do. It's through who you are. Allow the Kedusha, and I will say, that's why, again, I want to tell you, what's the difference between Kedusha, that changes you and changes the world versus just Kedusha that's nice? Everything depends on how rooted you are in the moment. So I said the greatest problem, the reason often why Kedusha doesn't change us the way that it can is because we're distracted. Even when we're learning, we're doing a whole bunch of different things. Okay, so just understand if you're doing that, you'll ingest information, it will not change you. But if I'm rooted, if I'm focused, then the Kedusha permeates through me. It's not a question of what goes in your mind. It's what comes in your soul. And you emerge from the experience a different kind of person. A person who could even change the birds. Incredible. So the Gemara goes right to both sides. I'll also just point out, then we have to move on. There's more to say about this bird. There's so much Torah on this bird, right? But again, different time. I just want to draw your attention to something else. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, both sides. So I just want to point out something amazing. If I were to ask you, who has had a greater impact on Klal Yisrael? Right? Klal Yisrael. Yonasan ben Uziel or Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? What would you say? Right? So it's not a totally fair question, right? Who are we to judge? But it would appear that it's Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Right? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai saved Klal Yisrael in the aftermath of the destruction of the second base. Remember again, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the one, the Gemara Maseches Gittin, who again, when the Bar Yonim laid siege to Yerushalayim, no one could get out. He was the one who pretended that he was dead, smuggled out in a coffin, comes before Vespasian. Tein liyavne v'chachameha. He saves the last remnant. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the one who instituted all the halachas we have of Zecher LeChurban, Zecher LeMikdash. All Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. All Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So I'll say it's fascinating, by the way, how sometimes it is not the smartest people who who affect the greatest amount of change. Right? It's just a fascinating idea that intellectual acuity and ability to make a difference in the world are not necessarily connected. And this is so incredible. It's important in the chinuch of our children, because sometimes our children struggle academically and we worry, they're not doing well in this, not doing well in that. What's going to be with them? I'll say, there are plenty of smart people who do absolutely nothing to make the world a better place, and plenty of people who aren't as smart, but roll up their sleeves and make a difference. And again, obviously, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was a great Talmud Chacham. He knew everything. I just want to point out how it's always struck me that kind of like, probably in this chevra, right, the guy who was maybe sitting on the sidelines during recess, he was the bottom of the shear. Right? Nobody picked him for, Gemara Jeopardy, because I don't know what they were doing, whatever it was. Like, he was sitting on the sidelines. And yet again, he's the one. Not the guy from the top of the shear, not the guy from the middle of the shear. Literally, again, the smallest of Hillel's Talmidim is one of the people who is directly responsible for the fact that we are here today. Just an incredible idea about kind of how we gauge the importance of people and who we think are the people who are going to have the most dramatic impact. Okay, in any event, we'll say so much more to say that. You want to say what to yell? And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, we'll have to save it for the next cycle. Okay, says the Mishnah. Haomer, Zebni, Naaman, Ze'achi, Eno Naaman. Interesting case. Let's say a guy comes along, Yakov comes along, and Yakov says, no, we don't know Yakov, we don't know Ruvain. Again, we'll define the parameters of this case, but Yakov comes along and says, this Ruvain, he's my son. What's the halacha? A father is believed to say, this is my son. We'll see why that is. Ze'achi, Eno Naaman. What happens if Ruvain comes along and Ruvain says, Yakov comes along and says, Esav, this guy, he's my son, he's my brother. Eno Naaman, he's not believed. Rabbi say, we'll discuss why that is. V'yital imo bechalko. Rabbi say, interestingly enough, even though Yakov is not believed to say that Esav is his brother, if we don't know this, we'll say, we'll see. All right, let me frame the case, for example. Let's say, actually, let me see a little bit differently. There's Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, right? There's Reuven and Shimon. So now, if Reuven comes along and says, this kid is my son, okay, Reuven's believed to say that. We'll see why. If Reuven says that this guy Levi is my brother, and now, remember again, Reuven and Shimon are brothers, and they acknowledge that they're brothers. Reuven says, Levi's our brother. And Shimon says, I don't know what you're talking about. Say for Rabbi again, and now let's say again their father dies, right? So let's say again Yakov dies. So now Shimon cannot be forced to split the inheritance with Levi, right? Because Shimon doesn't acknowledge Levi as a brother, but Reuven does, right? Reuven does. So therefore Reuven will split his portion, or we'll see what the division is. We'll give a portion of his inheritance to Levi, his acknowledged brother, but Shimon has no obligation to split the inheritance with Levi, because as far as Shimon is concerned, Levi is not their brother. So the Gemara says, if Levi dies, then Levi's portion goes back to Ruvain, but obviously Shimon doesn't get to share in that. What happens is interesting. What happens if Levi inherits property, right? Levi inherits property from someone else. Then in that case, ultimately, unless Levi dies without heirs, so Levi's property goes back into the familial pot, and all the brothers, not just Reuven, get to share in it. Now, what's the logic in that? The Rashban points out, because at the end of the day, Shimon did say Levi's our brother. So because Shimon acknowledged that Levi's the brother, therefore Shimon himself is moda, that whatever property Levi has should be split amongst the brothers. Okay? So the Gemara goes back to Zebni Ne'eman L'Mahilcha. So what does it mean that a father is believed to say, this is my brother, right? So Reuven comes along and he says, this boy, he's my son. So what does it mean that Reuven is acknowledged to say that the son, we'll just call him son is his son. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel Yarsha. What it means is for Yerusha purposes. That a father has the credibility to say, we've actually seen this motif more than once. B'yom hanchilo as banav, a father has control over Yerusha, even though we never knew that Reuven had a son, if Reuven says, this is my kid, then he's believed to say so. The Gemara says, furthermore, now it has another ramification. What's the other ramification? That if Reuven is married, right, Reuven is married to Rachel, and now what happens? We thought that they did not have children. And now Reuven's on his deathbed, and he says, I have a son. If Reuven has a son, there's no Yibum. So Reuven is believed to go ahead and acknowledge that he has a son for Yerusha purposes, and to exempt his wife from Yibum. Amud Beis. Liyarsha Pshita. So once I say, obviously for Yerusha, that's obvious. That's obvious, right? Now, why is it obvious? Rashbam points out where there's a migo. What's the migo? The migo is that anyway, Reuven can gift his estate to whoever he wants. Right? In other words, we'll say, when he's alive, he can do whatever he wants with his property. So therefore, because he has complete control and autonomy over his property, he's also believed to say, I have a son. I have a son. Beautiful. So the Gemara says, Liftras ishtam min hayibum isrichale. You're right. The chiddush over here is the Yibum case. That this whole time Reuven's married to Rachel, we thought they had no children. Now Reuven's on his deathbed, and Reuven says, by the way, I have a son. Right? This is my son, I have a son. So suddenly everything has changed, and now again, as a result, Rachel, his wife, is going to be exempt from Yibum. So that's the chiddush. That's the chiddush. The fact that a father has the ability to say, I have a son, no one knew I had a son, but I do have a son, that's easy because Reuven has a migo. Migo that he could have gifted his property to whoever he wants, he has the ability to say, I have a son who's going to be Yoreshni. The Yibum case is the bigger chiddush. So Moshe doesn't understand. Hanami Tinei, but we learned that as well. Misham b'shas misasel yeshli banim ne'aman. If someone says at the time of his death, meaning he's on his deathbed, right? Reuven's on his deathbed, and he says, I have kids. I have a son. He is believed. Yeshli achim eino ne'aman. But if he says, I have brothers, so then he is not believed. I will say, what that's talking about of a case, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, is Reuven's married to Rachel, right? So again, now let's say they have no children. So case number one is if Reuven says, I have a son, or sons, or children, he's believed. If he says, if there are no children, and he says, I have brothers, now we never knew that Reuven had brothers. Now he's suddenly saying, I have brothers, which would then mean that his wife is subject to Yibum, that we don't believe him. Eino ne'aman. So the Gemara says, good. Hasam de lo muchsak lan ba'ach, hacha afagav de muchsak lan ba'ach. So we'll say the Gemara says, you're right, you know what the distinction is? The distinction ultimately, again, is whether or not there was a chazakah, that there was a brother or wasn't a brother. Take a quick look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam is not so far. If you look to the left in the Rashbam, so the Rashbam writes over here, umishani hasam de lo muchsak lan, hai gavra b'shas misa, lo ba'achi lo bebani. So this son, he doesn't have a chazaka, right? There's no chazaka either about brothers or about sons. So now this woman is in a state where we're assuming over here that she's not going to have to do yibum, because again, the chazaka is right now, there's no son and there's no brothers. So you put those two together, there's no yibum. And what happened? The Gemara says, the svek sveka, shama yesh lo banim, this lomer in lo. Good. So the Gemara therefore says, fine. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, mipnei ma amru zebni ne'aman. So why is it that when a father says, this is my son, why is it that he is believed to make that statement? So why is that? Because since a husband who says, I divorced my wife, is believed, so therefore he's also believed to go ahead and say, I don't have a son. The Gemara says, what are you talking about? I'm Rabbi Yosef. Yosef says, Mari Davram. Now, Mari Davram is like a Talmudic expression of like what are you talking about? Right? Literally again, by the God of Abraham, right? What are you talking about? Mari Davram. Tali Tanya, Bidalo Tanya. You are linking two halachas, one of which is explicitly said, and one that has not been explicitly said. Now, out of those two halachas, which one was explicitly said? Which one wasn't? So the Gemara says over here that halacha l'maisa, a man is believed to say zebni, right? That's our Mishnah. So a man is believed to say, this is my son. Now, as far as we know, we don't have any brisa or Mishnah that says that a man is believed to say, I divorced my wife. Right? In other words, that first of all, we'll say, now by the way, in general, why wouldn't a man be believed to say, I divorced my wife? Just by his own, because in general, first of all, a get has a kol, right? A get has publicity to it. Why does a get have publicity to it? Because you need Eidim. Eidim always generate publicity. So if a guy says, I divorced my wife, and we never heard of this, and there's obviously no supporting documentation, so the truth is we don't believe him. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? So the Gemara says, this is what it means to say. Listen to this. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Mipnei ma amru zebni ne'eman. In general, why is it that a father is believed to say, this is my son, right? So we know Reuven, as far as we know, Reuven never had a kid. Now suddenly Reuven comes along and he says, I have a kid, this is my son. Remember again, saying you have a kid could have multiple ramifications. Number one, for Yerusha, but Yerusha is not really a big chiddush. Why not? Because anyway, you could gift your property to whoever you want. Okay, so now you're saying you have a kid, right? Reuven's saying he has a kid, so his Yerusha is going to go to his kid, fine. The bigger chiddush is now, when he says I have a kid, when Reuven says I have a kid, Rachel is going to be exempt from Yibum. That's a big deal. But okay, a father is believed to say, I have a son. Ho'il will be, so the Gemara says, sorry, let's say that again. Ultimately, again, why is it that a man is believed to say, this is my son? So the Gemara says, Ho'il ubiyodo legarsha. Since a man has the ability to go ahead and say that he divorced his wife. So we'll say, so now, what does that mean? Look at the Rashbam. Ho'il ubal sh'amar girashti es ishni ne'eman v'hilchach migo di bay amar girashti v'tipater me'ayibum ki amar nami yesh labanim ne'eman. So we'll say, this is fascinating. There is another way for a man to exempt his wife from Yibum. What's the other way to exempt his wife from Yibum? What's the other way? I divorced her. Remember again, Yibum only occurs if they're married at the time of his death. So listen to this. Reuven comes along and Reuven says, by the way, right, newsflash, I have a son, and therefore again, my wife is exempt from Yibum. Versus 1 second, hold up over here. Right? Why should we believe Reuven to say that he has a son and exempt his wife from Yibum? Why should we believe that? To which the Gemara says he has a migo. What's the migo? He could have said, I divorced my wife. Right? And because he could have said, and again, obviously, if they're not married, there's no yibum. So because he could have said, I divorced her, he's believed to say, I have a son. Amrav Yosef, and since the husband controls the divorce process, he would have been believed to make that claim that I divorced my wife. Since he could have claimed that he divorced her, therefore, Allah Lamaisa, he is believed to say that we have a son. Rabbi Yosef, Hashta da Amrit Amrinan Baal Shalom Girashtes Ishti Ne'eman. So Rabbi Yosef says like this. So now that we're saying that a husband who claims that he divorced his wife is believed, so the Gemara says, why? Hoel ubiyadol gash. I'm sorry. Let me read that again. Rabbi Yosef, Hashta da Amrit Amrinan. Hoel ubar Baal Sha'amar Girashtes Ishti Ne'eman. So why is it that we believe a husband to say that he divorced his wife? The Gemara says, since he has the power to divorce her, he is believed to say he did divorce her. So we'll say, see here what's happening over here? So now if we follow this progression, the Mishnah introduces us to the idea that halacha l'maisa, a father could claim that this is my son. And that has Yerusha ramifications. Right? Now that's easy, because there's a migo. Since the father has the ability to go ahead and gift his property to whoever he wants, he is believed to say, this is my son for Yerusha purposes. But that's not the Chiddush. What's the Chiddush? He's believed to say, this is my son for Yibum purposes. We never knew that Reuven had a son. Reuven is about to die. We think that Rachel is going to be subject to Yibum. Right? Then Reuven now suddenly says he has a son. He's believed. Now why is he believed? Because he has a migo also. What's the migo? He could have said, I divorced her. Why is he believed to say I could have divorced her? Because the husband has control over the divorce process. So because the husband has control over the divorce process, and he is believed to say he divorced her, that's his migo. And therefore when he claims that I have a son, he is believed. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So Kiyasar Yitzchak Bar Yosef Am Rabbi Yochanan, Baal Shem Grashtes Ishti Eino Ne'eman. Okay. So now comes along Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef and says in Rabbi Yochanan, an opposite halacha, or an opposite statement. If a husband says, I divorced my wife, he is not believed. Eino Ne'eman. Now, by the way, what's the logic in that statement? So the Rashbam, if you look in the Rashbam, in the widest lines, about 10 lines in, Eino Ne'eman, Dem Isa de Garsha, Kala Islay Lemilsa, Hilchach, Lo Amrina, Mali L'Shaker, De Kamali L'Shaker, B'Makam Eidim Lo Amrina. So let's listen to this. Very simple. Why does Rabbi Yochanan say that if a husband claims that he divorced his wife, we don't believe him? Very simple. If he divorced his wife, there should be a kol. People should know about it. Because a get generates publicity. The fact that there's no publicity over here would seem to indicate to us that Reuven is not telling the truth. Rav Sheshes biyadei. Rav Sheshes literally went ahead and waved his hands. Now, waving his hands is like a form of objection. So the Gemara says, Azalei hoil to Rav Yosef. it must be the whole of Rav Yosef has just evaporated. And again, remember, Rav Yosef said that a husband is believed to say he divorced his wife. Why is he believed to say he divorced his wife? Since he controls the process. So we'll say, we're going to pause over here for today. So we'll say, so just understand what we're ending off with, right? Just follow the progression. Mishnah introduces us to the idea that a father is believed to say, this is my son for Yerusha purposes. The Gemara also tells us, by the way, it also works for Yibum purposes. Now, why is a father believed to say, this is my son for Yibum purposes? What's the answer? The answer is that halacha l'maisa, that since a father has a migo, right? And the migo ultimately says as follows. The migo says that since a father has the ability to divorce his wife, so a man has the ability to divorce his wife, therefore, again, he could have said, I divorce her. That would have pastured her from Yibum also. Therefore, he's believed to say that halacha l'maisa, he has a son. So Rabbi says, so now this gets into the machlokes as is a man believed to say he divorced his wife? So this seems to be now a machlokes between Rav Yosef and Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Yosef saying yes, since he controls the process, he believed to say he divorced her. Rabbi Yochanan saying no. Resolution of Mirat Hashem and resolution of the Mishnah Mirat Hashem tomorrow. Shkayach, everyone.